Hi, I'm Gail Cooperman. I'm an instructor with Merit Career Development, and we're focusing on psychological safety today. The reason for that is that we've had some clients have some pretty serious problems as a result of lack of psychological safety, and they've actually come to us and asked us to please help them change the culture in their organization. And when we looked at the problems, we realized it starts with psychological safety. So what do we mean by that, and why is it important? Well, it starts with this triad: the leader, the follower, and the situation. And what we mean by that is that you have psychological safety that will come or go based on the situation at hand. So if there's a crisis, if somebody sees a problem and they need to report it, and they don't have a good rapport with their leader, or they're scared about the situation, the follower may not bring this up to the right person. If there is psychological safety, they'll feel comfortable bringing it to their attention. So the relationship between the leader, the follower, and the situation varies from situation to situation, leader to follower, follower to leader. But it's important to take note that these three elements are part of every leadership triad, and they have a role in psychological safety. Now, the leadership leader-follower role is built on trust. And again, I want to emphasize built. You can't just create trust, it's earned. It's worked at. You work for trust. So what I mean by that is as you get to know somebody and you spend more time working with them and you know where you can push and where you can't push, you'll start to feel more comfortable. But you need to be able to have trust among yourselves in order to have psychological safety. It's key. Without it, you're never going to have psychological safety. Amy Edmondson has done massive research on psychological safety. In fact, she coined the term initially. There's a great TED Talk that you can watch about her. She'll explain it. She'll give you examples. She'll go into a lot more detail than I will today. But one thing I do want to share with you right now is her definition of psychological safety. And that is, it's a shared belief that a team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. What do we mean by that? They can take a risk, they can open up, they can share some of their concerns, and they don't have to worry about losing their job, losing a friend, losing a relationship, losing their income. They know that they're safe. So it's really key. So let me give you a little more detail about psychological safety. There are three main components. The first one is that when you have psychological safety, you do feel comfortable taking interpersonal risks. And those risks could include asking for help, admitting mistakes, questioning procedures. You know those companies where everyone says, we always did it this way, so therefore you're afraid to question those procedures? That isn't necessarily the best way, right? So if you have psychological safety in a company, you're going to improve your procedures. You're going to question them. You're going to let people look for a better way. Why not? Why wouldn't you want that? You want them to be able to point out mistakes, right? So these are all part of the safety of taking interpersonal risks. The second point is it's really necessary for teamwork. Why? Because you're interdependent on each other. You have to be able to rely on each other. You have to know that you have each other's back. So it's really key that interdependence is part of the teamwork picture. And that means you can ask for help from one person, and then you know that they can ask for help from you. And sometimes that help is covering for you. You have to leave early from work. You have to stay late. You need to switch a shift. You need to run home and take care of a personal issue. Well, you have a good team relationship. You have personal and psychological safety. You can cover for each other like that. And hopefully you will have boundary-less communications, meaning there's no boundary. You can really touch all the important topics and feel safe. And finally, the third element is relationships are built on interpersonal experiences. So think about this. The more you do together, the closer you're going to get and the more bonding you'll do. That's why you hear a lot about team building exercises, people going out to a meal together, going out for a drink after work or something of that nature. Something like that does help build the bonding process. Psychological safety also has an impact when it comes to job control. when you have psychological safety, you have a certain sense of autonomy. You feel like you can handle your job. You feel like you can go ahead and make some decisions. You can provide input. You can provide direction to the supervisor about your activities and recommendations and your tasks and the best way to get something done. This is great to bring somebody in your staff in the decision-making process. That builds psychological safety. It's the rapport building, the bonding, the relationship building. And remember, it will also help them build their skills and help them acquire new ones. And also help you identify where your team may need additional skill training. That's important. Also, you want to know about the workload. Are they afraid to tell you there's too much on their plate and maybe they're not going to do anything right? Or will they be able to share with you they need help? They just can't do it all. Obviously, you're better off and you'll get better results if they can talk to you about the workload if they can't manage it, right? And finally, you want to be able to talk about rewards. You want to be able to talk about recognition and giving everyone the attention and the benefit that they deserve. As a supervisor, you want to talk about your goals, your objectives with your team. And your goal would be to create more workplace improvements with psychological safety. You want to empower them more. And I have a couple good examples for you about empowering your team. So where you have psychological safety, the level of empowerment goes up a lot because people aren't afraid to take responsibility. At the low end of it, somebody who doesn't feel they have any psychological safety is going to have to go to you all the time and inform you of any little thing that they see, any little issue that they see. If they want to be able to make a change, if they think they see a problem, they'll just inform you and then pretty much walk away. If they're a little more empowered, they will inform you and then take an action to correct something. Now, if they're further empowered, which is a good thing, they'll take the action and then inform you. So in other words, they see a problem, they're going to fix it and let you know that they fixed it. And that really highly empowered person who has a lot of psychological trust, they may just take the action, fix the situation, and, oh, by the way, just mention it to you in passing. So obviously, depending on the skill level, you have to decide how empowered you want your team, but the higher they feel, the more they feel empowered, the better their performance is going to be. So why is psychological safety so hard to come by? Why are people afraid to speak up? Well, here's a quote from Amy Edmondson, who I referred to earlier. The people in the room are afraid to report a problem because they don't want to look stupid. They don't want to look ignorant, they don't want to look incompetent, they don't want to look intrusive, and they don't want to look negative in many instances. These are people who are not empowered and do not have psychological safety. So therefore, they don't ask questions. They don't challenge the norm. They don't question the workflow. They don't want to disrupt anything, and they don't give you better outcomes. We seek to manage our impression of ourselves. We call it impression management. And it's really important that people don't worry about looking stupid, and they're not afraid to ask questions. So with that in mind, the most important lesson you can learn is that you need to create an environment of psychological safety to free your people up to be open and to engage and to help your company in the best way possible, to confront a more experienced coworker without fear of reprisal or reprimanding or losing their job. And you want them to be able to challenge the norm. You don't want them to say, we've always done it this way, so that's it, we can't change it. No, of course not. We really want to keep things moving, right? So then you might question, how do I maintain accountability if I create a high level of psychological safety? Well, that's a good question. We have this little chart here to show you that psychological safety may be on one side and accountability on the other, and what you need is to find a midpoint that's comfortable within your organization based on the people you have, their skills, and the situation that exists. Now, here is our final summary of how psychological safety can play out in your company. So if you look at this, we have an x-axis and a y-axis with a low to high rating of psychological safety and a low to high rating of being accountable and motivated. So if we start in the lower zone and you have low psychological safety and low motivation, you pretty much have an apathetic group of people, which obviously you don't want. And that's not good. We call that the apathy zone. They're apathetic, they're really not performing. Now, if you go up a step where there's high psychological safety, but there's no motivation and low accountability, you may have people very comfortable, but are they working at their best? Maybe not. So where we want to go is the learning zone, the high performance zone, the zone where there's high psychological safety and high motivation and accountability. Because the fourth and remaining quadrant we did not go over is the anxiety zone. And that's what causes so many problems. That's the zone where people are highly motivated and they want to be accountable, but they're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to tell you there's a problem. They're afraid to report it, even though it could result in unhappy customers, it could result in unhappy productivity problems, it could result in a lot of bad things. They're too afraid because there's no psychological safety and there's a lot of responsibility and pressure on them to perform.
So now that you know how important it is to have psychological safety for your company, and you know that you need a balance, not totally psychologically safe, you still need to keep motivation and accountability intact. How do you bring psychological safety into your organization? So first thing you want to do is you want to frame the work that has to be done as a learning opportunity. Instead of focusing on the execution problems or the other issues that went wrong, you want to talk about how you can learn from this and do better. That's the first thing. The second thing that really makes a big difference and goes a long way is if you can admit to your own fallibilities. And by that, I mean frequently the best leaders are those that will admit they don't know everything, they've made this mistake before, they've had this problem in the past. So it really helps create a safe environment when people hear that you as a leader can relate and have had issues of some similarity. And the third point is to model curiosity. And by that what we mean is just keep asking questions. Because when you ask questions about how things are done or how things can be better, you're going to encourage other people. They'll model what you do and they'll want to do the same. So you want to keep people asking questions and speaking up. Thank you very much for watching this video. We hope you found this information helpful.